Before we take part in the Lord's table, shall we turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 24, 25 and 26. When he had given thanks, he brake it and said, "Take it, this is my body, which is broken for you. This do in remembrance of me." After the same manner he took the cup when he had supped, saying, "This cup is a New Testament in my blood. This do ye as often as ye drink it in remembrance of me. For as often as ye eat this bread and drink this cup, you do shew the Lord's death till he come." When God sometimes wants to bless us, he breaks us. As we go through the brokenness, as we travel through this experience of being broken, how do we take life? That's why the Bible writes a very beautiful centermost chapter in the entire pages of Bible. Psalm 118 verse 22, we will read all together. "The stone which the builders refused is become the headstone of the corner." The stone that is rejected has become the headstone. In other words, that became the cornerstone. Many times when God takes us through the periods of rejection, it could be the rejection of the people. Supposing if we go through the rejection of people, rejection of friends, how do we handle that? And now coming to the second important sub-theme of this series, how do you handle when you go through experiences of being broken through the harsh words, broken through the words, rejection through the words, or rejection through the despises of the words of the people around us? How do you handle that? As we have been seeing the life experiences of David, we'll once again turn to 2 Samuel chapter 6 verse 20. We will read all together. "Then David returned to bless his household, and Michal, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet David and said, 'How glorious was the king of Israel today, who uncovered himself today in the eyes of the handmaids of his servants, as one of the vain fellows shamelessly uncovereth himself.'" If this kind of words are addressed to us, how do you handle this? Here we see that there is Michal, who is the wife of this king called David. She's also the daughter of ex-king. And when she saw through the window, we see this king called David dancing and glorifying God and worshiping God as the Ark of the Covenant was brought back to the city of David. If you see the context, when the Ark of the Covenant, which is symbolic expression of the mighty presence of God, one day through the experience of Ichabod was snatched away by the enemies. And that was so painful to every child of God, because they could not see God's glory put to shame just because they could not follow the protocol. The Ark of the Covenant was confiscated and taken to the land of his Philistines. When that experience of Ichabod totally shattered every child of God who really concerned about the glory of God. After many years of dry face, now the Ark of Covenant is being brought back to the city of David. It was such an excitement for them, because just as the journey they began, they brought the Ark of the Covenant. Having seen all this, now successfully the Ark of Covenant is brought back to the city of David. That excitement he could not contain. He started worshiping God so much so that he forgot himself. As he started dancing in the presence of God, there sees this queen, Michal, looking out of the window, and as she sees David dancing, she could not take it. As he comes back to home, he wanted to bless every one of his household, his family members. He was so excited because God's presence has come back to this place. He wanted to bless everyone. This is the time he receives the bitter criticism from the very wife. In fact, he loved Michal so much that he put his head for her. In fact, he won her through his love. He sacrificed his life for her. And now this is the statement that she gives in 2 Samuel chapter 6 verse 20. "David returned to bless his household, and Michal the daughter of Saul came out to meet David and said, 'How glorious was the king of Israel today, who uncovered himself today in the eyes of the handmaids of his servants, as one of the vain fellows shamelessly uncovereth himself.'" Those three words, we know those are used in a daily basis for us. Those three words, to be put in a simple language, he says, "You shameless, waste fellow, naked fellow, absolutely shameless." These are the words that she used. And she made mockery of him in a satirical way, saying, how glorious was he today. The king seems to be so glorious today, having uncovered himself. When he took these words, how did he respond? You know, it is not by the action a Christian is known. A Christian is known by the reaction. Life gives you many options how to respond. A child of God knows pretty well that God is sovereign and he allowed this. If you know this fact, your kind of response would be totally different. Imagine there are two people going in two different cars. Both of them got stuck in this high-tech city traffic jam. Imagine for a while. Both of them are supposed to go to office at sharp 10. Both of them have got boss. One says, I can't do anything now. Accept God's sovereignty. He switches on the songs and starts worshipping the Lord. This is response number one. Both of them are working the same office. Okay? The second one, he also is traveling in his car. He has also got stuck in the same traffic. This car is just beside this car. Now this man, as he sees the traffic not moving at all, remembering his boss, he started scolding everyone, the neighbor, honking so much, scolding the traffic system of Hyderabad, scolding the government system, scolding everyone, in fact the wife, because she delayed something at his home. Everyone, he started blasting, sitting there, calling them up, making so much of mess. The situation is same for both of them. Action is same for both of them, but reaction is different for both of them. How do you react? You get to receive this criticism, you get to receive these harsh words haunting at you. How do you respond back? You have every option. Either to hit back straight away, talk up front, or you can also choose to respond in a godly way. What response did David choose? The first response, 2 Samuel chapter 6. We'll quickly see the first response and go to the next one, please. 2 Samuel chapter 6 verse 21, all of us. And David said unto Michal, it was before the Lord which chose me before thy father and before all his household to appoint me ruler over the people of the Lord, over Israel. Therefore will I play before the Lord. First thing is, he says, for me, when I danced, when I worshipped, when I forgot myself, my audience was not you, neither your handmaiden, neither of Israel. My only audience was my God. I don't need to seek your approval. I don't need to please man. I don't need to please you as well. I don't need to please you. I don't need to please your handmaiden. I don't need to please the children of Israel. My only business in this world, my only audience in this world is my God, who appointed me as a king over his people. If God is happy, that's the end of the story. My business is done. My audience, my only audience in my life, my only target group in my life, whom I need to please, whom I need to make them happy, is my God alone. Nothing else. None else. See how clear he has, how much of clarity he has. Whom to please? Whom should I address to? That's why in life, who is your audience? Whom do you try to satisfy all the time? Whom do you try to please all the time? To whose tunes do you dance all the time? Probably this is the right way of putting it. David says, for me, my only audience is God. That's all. That's the only matter that is bothering me. In his presence, I will dance. In his presence, I will worship him. In his presence, I will forget myself. I don't need to please you, neither your handmaiden, nor the children of Israel, nor all those people who are watching me. I am not dancing for them. I am not playing for them. I am playing in the presence of God. If God is happy, that's enough for me. My dear brother and sister, that's why Paul says, if I please man, he says, I am not the servant of God. Being the children of God, our only business is to satisfy, please our Creator. Second thought, 2 Samuel chapter 6, verse 22. And I will yet be more vile than this, and will be base in my own sight. And the maidservants which thou hast spoken of them shall I be had in honor. You see such a beautiful expression of response by David. He says, I will be yet more vile than this. Second beautiful thought, I will be base in my own sight.
If you don't seek the approval of people, second thing that we always seek is approval of our self. This is the problem. If people don't accept, it's fine. But it should be comfortable for ourselves. We need to accept ourselves. And biggest problem in this life, in a word it teaches you, is accept yourself as you are. Very easy to say that. Do you accept yourself as you are? Be practical. Do you accept yourself as you are? We are always self-conscious of ourselves. We want ourselves to be in the good books of ourselves. Funniest thing, right? If we don't want God to be audience, we want ourselves to be audience of ourselves. Actor is same, audience also same. If I speak this, it might sound very trivial for all of us, but truth is, if God is not the audience, then we say, I care a damn about others, I care a damn about what God thinks, but I care a damn about what I think about myself. Self-worth. Self-worth is the buzzword nowadays everyone talks about. If something hurts yourself, you can't forgive. If others hurt you, fine. That's a different story that we have already gone across. But if you hurt yourself, I'm feeling ashamed of myself. I hate myself. I can't take this any longer. How do you handle that? David says, if it comes to the matter of words, if you're hurting me, do you think that I need to have a self-worth of myself? I will be base in my own sight. My own self-perception about myself, I even care a damn about that. That's why the biggest challenge of present world is, when self doesn't hurt you, nothing in the world can hurt you. I repeat the lines once again. When your own self doesn't hurt you, nothing in the world can hurt you. Wounds of others doesn't make any difference to us. But when the wounds of the self, why do people commit suicide? When their self is hurting, they can't survive. Why do people kill others? When their self is hurt, when, in other words, our language, even the ego is hurt, you end up into all complications. David says, for this context, I don't even bother, I don't even have a worth about my own self. I can be worse than this. Who is the audience and whom does he want to satisfy? The actor and the audience, both of them doesn't need to be the same. I need not please my own self. That's why when you come to this understanding, see, that's why when you come to the Lord Jesus Christ, he gave a beautiful example. Romans chapter 15 verse 3. For even Christ pleased not himself. Then what? If he didn't please himself, what is it? It is written, the reproaches of them that reproached thee fell on me. In other words, Jesus Christ says, all the reproaches, I accepted them because I didn't want to please my own self. If the self is hurting, I could not have tolerated that. Jesus Christ says, if my self-worth is disturbed because of the words of reproaches of someone, I couldn't have survived. Therefore, I didn't want to please my own self. That's why man's biggest pleasure is to satisfy the self. When your self is satisfied, you have the greatest achievement of the world. Yes, I can satisfy myself. In fact, when the end days, Bible says it very clearly, in the end days, the biggest problem in the end days, understand, if this symptom is seen, we are already in the end days. That's why we'll turn quickly to 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1, please. This know also that in the last days, you see, in the last days, perilous times shall come. Perilous means problematic times. In other words, when Paul wrote this, it was almost 2,000 years back. Paul tells a prophetic words to Timothy and says, Timothy, in the end days, mark these words, in the last days, perilous times will come. Perilous means problematic times, heartbreaking times. Most uncomfortable situations will arise in families, in churches, in the society that you live in. And the problem is, now symptoms starts from the next verse. First symptom, for men shall be lovers of their own selves. Own selves. This is the symptom 1. Symptom 2, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy. Okay, let us put the list aside. Let us just focus on the first symptom. What is the first symptom? Lovers of their own selves. Self-love. People say you need to love yourself. What does God say? does God say to love ourselves? Shall we turn to Luke's Gospel, chapter 14, verse 26. Not only deny, there is a bigger word for that now. Luke's Gospel, chapter 14, verse 26. If any man come to me and hate not his father, mother, wife, children, brethren, sisters, and his own life, he cannot be my. This is the difficult part, isn't it? Hating father, mother, wife, children, brother, sisters for petty reasons is comfortable. But last line, hating your own life, he cannot be my disciple. My dear brother and sister, hating, forget about loving. God says if you can't hate yourself, you don't deserve to be my disciple. See, being disciple of God is a very beautiful experience. You experience heaven on earth. But God says there are conditions applied. What is the condition? You need to hate your own selves. But the question is, when we hate our own selves, Bible says in the end times, men will be lovers of self. What a beautiful contrast. God said hate yourself, but end days symptom, perilous times, problematic times is lovers of self. That's why, even science and technology understood this fact. They said, when we manufacture a phone needs to have a camera, once upon a time. Now they said, no, not camera. They need to have a selfie. The word what is that? Selfie captures whose pictures? Now, a phone, so much of gigabytes, I don't bother. What is the process? I don't bother. What is the camera? Camera, come to the point. What is the front camera lens? Nice. Let me check. Like this, you put your face in different angles and you start looking, capturing, updating status. This is what is prophesied 2000 years back, not new. Don't be surprised. If someone updates so many selfies, someone said if you upload more than 6 selfies, you have a serious mental disorder, it seems. If this is hurting, don't take me wrong. This is what science says, so probably they may be wrong. Now statistics might have gone up higher. What they say is, keep up, always clicking selfie. And that's the point is, Bible has prophesied it 2000 years back that this would be the symptom of the end days. We are so obsessed, that camera. In fact, the camera, when you switch on, you start looking like this. Same face doesn't change. Camera filters may change probably, but face doesn't. We want ourselves to be pleasing to ourselves. For that, you try to change so much and you try to, you put all your efforts and trying to still look. You need to look beautiful to yourself. This is what world says. But God says, never be carried away. End days, don't try to please your own self. You'll get into the trap. Trying to please your own self, you end up into a trap. Pleasing others is a trap, and second trap is pleasing your own self. That's why, when George Whitefield, when he happened to be a mighty speaker, someone has written a very, very sadistic comment, a satirical comment addressed to George Whitefield. You know what comment is it? They wrote something like this: I have not seen such a stupid speaker ever in my life. Addressed to George Whitefield. In fact, George Whitefield is such a mighty preacher. If he's coming to one city, the total city used to get traffic jam. In such is a mighty anointing he has. Now this man writes to him and says, George Whitefield, and he writes address like this: George Whitefield is so heinous out of all the speakers. Then this man replies and says, my dear brother, I'm not only heinous about all speakers, I'm heinous in the entire world. This letter comes to this man, the critic, harsh critic. He could not take it because he thought that he will respond blatantly back. But this man said, I am not only heinous among speakers, if you know actual George Whitefield, he is worse than everybody in the world. Then this man, after a few more years later, comes to the same crusade and comes and says, I was the one who gave this comment to you. Then he says, you have not seen the real George Whitefield. George Whitefield in real is worse than the comments that you have given. So I'm happy that you have elevated my level. This man couldn't answer. Finally, he accepted God's authority and the spiritual maturity of this man, and he became the ardent follower of this man. Now, why I'm telling this is, we live in a world we try to please our own self. But the problem is, the more you try to please yourself, the more it ends into pain. That's why David says, I can be base in my own sight. May the Lord bless this word. Shall we close our eyes, please?